Emma had lived in the quiet house for 3 years. And yet every day she felt a kind of distance that had nothing to do with walls or doors. She had married David, a man who gave her kindness and stability after years of feeling alone. Their love was steady, their bond strong, and she felt grateful for it. But love in marriage didn't erase all the challenges life carried. David's son Luke was the quiet shadow in this story. The one piece that never quite fit and the one part of her heart she didn't know how to reach. Luke was 20, a college student who only came home during breaks. He wasn't rude, never disrespectful, but he carried a reserve that made Emma hesitate each time she tried to speak. Their conversations never went past the surface. How was class? Or dinner's ready? He would answer politely, then retreat to his room, leaving Emma staring after him, wondering if she had said something wrong. She never wanted to force closeness, never wanted to press into a space where he wasn't ready to let her in. But each visit left her longing, wishing there was some way to be more than just Dad's wife to him. That December, snow lay thick outside, burying the streets and wrapping the house in silence. David had been working longer shifts, so often the evenings left only Emma and Luke under the same roof. She would find herself in the kitchen, folding laundry or tidying up, while Luke sat in the living room with his headphones on, eyes locked on his laptop screen. The two of them shared the same air, but not the same world. Emma told herself it was natural, that young men at his age had their own lives, their own pace, but deep inside she couldn't quiet the ache. She remembered the first time she met him. David had taken her to a small diner to make the introduction. Luke had been just 17 then, tall but still a little boy in the face. He had shaken her hand, offered a polite smile, and avoided her gaze the whole time. She had tried to talk about school, about hobbies, even about sports she knew nothing about. He had nodded, responded in single words, and the rest of the meal had been quiet. She had gone home that night wondering if she would ever mean anything to him. Years had passed since then, and though things weren't as stiff, they hadn't changed much either. Luke still kept a careful line between them, one that Emma never dared cross. She respected the love he held for his mother, even though Emma had never met her. She had seen the way his expression softened when he spoke of her in passing, the way his tone shifted when childhood memories came up. Emma understood his mother had been irreplaceable, and Emma had never tried to take her place. She only wanted to be someone he could trust, someone he could look at and know cared about him. But how do you give love to someone who doesn't know how to take it? One evening, the snowstorm outside grew heavier, tapping hard against the windows. Emma sat at the kitchen table, folding warm laundry fresh from the dryer. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the roof under the weight of snow. Luke passed by, nodded politely, and went upstairs. It was nothing unusual, but something in Emma's chest tightened. She wondered if he thought she had taken something from him by being here. Did he believe she had replaced memories of his mother? Did he think his father's love for Emma left less love for him? These thoughts came often, and each time they weighed her down like the snow pressing. Against the glass dot, Emma leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes for a moment. She told herself she had to be patient. Love could not be demanded. Family could not be forced. Yet, in her heart, she longed for some sign, anything that showed he saw her, that he felt she wasn't just a stranger sharing a home. She carried the laundry to the living room, set it down, and sat for a while, listening to the storm outside. Somewhere upstairs, faint music came from Luke's room. She wondered what he was listening to, what kind of thoughts filled his head. She wanted to know him. She wanted him to know her. But the silence between them stood like a locked door she didn't know how to open. That night, as she looked at the dim light under his bedroom door, Emma couldn't help but wonder if the silence itself carried secrets of grief, loyalty, or fear. She didn't know. She only knew one thing. Sometimes silence wasn't empty. Sometimes silence was full of words waiting to be spoken. And though she didn't realize it yet, that winter break was about to change everything. The storm came down harder that night. Snow swept across the windows, rattling them like a warning. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the power went out, leaving the house swallowed in darkness. Emma stood in the kitchen, a single candle in her hand, listening to the silence deepen. David had called earlier, saying work would keep him late. That meant it was just her and Luke until morning. She moved to the living room, setting candles on the mantel and lighting the fireplace. The flames came alive, filling the space with a soft glow. She sat down, hugging her sweater around her shoulders, letting the fire's warmth chase away the cold. That was when she heard footsteps. Luke appeared in the doorway, his hoodie pulled tight around him, his expression caught between hesitation and something softer. "You don't mind if I sit here, do you?" he asked, his voice almost shy. Emma looked up and gave him a gentle smile. "Of course not. It's warmer here." He crossed the room and sat in the armchair across from her. For a long while, neither of them spoke. The fire cracked, snow whipped against the glass, and shadows danced across the walls. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't easy either. It was the kind of silence that waited for someone to break it. Finally, Luke leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You know, I used to hate winters." Emma turned her head, surprised he was the one to speak first. "Why's that?" she asked softly. His eyes stayed fixed on the fire. "Because it reminds me of Mom. She loved them. She'd make hot chocolate every time it snowed, even if it was just a light dusting. We'd sit by the window and watch the snow fall. She said winters made everything quiet, like the world was starting fresh." Emma's chest tightened at his words. He rarely spoke about his mother. She had been careful never to ask, not wanting to intrude on sacred memories. But here he was, offering them freely. "She must have been wonderful," Emma said, her voice gentle. "She was," he replied, his tone filled with both warmth and sorrow. "That's why, when Dad married you, I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to accept someone new. It felt like, if I did, I was letting go of her." Emma's throat ached. She had feared this for years, that he saw her as a replacement, as a shadow trying to take over a space that wasn't hers. But hearing him speak it aloud made her realize the truth wasn't anger, fear. "I never wanted to take her place," Emma whispered. "I knew she was special. I knew you loved her. I only ever wanted to be here for you, even if it was in a small way." Luke finally looked at her. His eyes reflected the firelight, but behind it was something more, an honesty he had never shown before. "I know. I see that now. You never forced yourself into her spot. You just stayed. Even when I kept my distance." Emma blinked back the sting of tears. For years she had wondered if he noticed, if he realized how careful she had been. To hear him say it now felt like a door cracking open. Luke sat back, exhaling. "I guess I didn't know how to deal with it. I thought if I acted cold, maybe you'd stop trying. But you didn't. You kept being. You—" Emma gave a soft laugh, one filled with relief. "I don't give up that easily." They both smiled then, small and cautious. But it was the first smile they had shared together in a long time. The fire popped, throwing sparks against the grate. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the warmth grew thicker, filling the space not just with heat, but with something unspoken. Luke shifted in his chair, almost restless. "It's strange. I didn't think I'd ever say this to you. But I'm glad you're here, even if I don't say it much." Emma's heart swelled. She wanted to reach across the space between them, to hold his hand, but she stayed still, not wanting to break the fragile moment. "I'm glad too," she said softly. The minutes passed in silence again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It wasn't the silence of strangers. It was the silence of two people who had finally begun to understand each other. The fire burned low. The storm roared outside, and in the dim candlelight, Emma realized something had shifted. The wall she had felt for years wasn't gone, but a piece of it had crumbled. And once a wall begins to crumble, it can never be whole again. That night, she went to bed with her heart lighter than it had been in years. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing. She and Luke had taken their first real step toward something new. And though this snowstorm raged on, Emma felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. It came from something far deeper, something that had finally found its way to the surface. Emma woke early the next morning, the house still cold from the storm. She slipped on her robe and padded down the stairs, expecting the usual silence. But as she reached the bottom, she caught the smell of coffee, rich, warm, and unmistakably fresh. Her brow furrowed. David was still asleep upstairs. That left only one possibility. She stepped into the kitchen and froze. Luke stood at the stove, spatula in hand, his hair messy and his hoodie sleeves pushed up. On the counter sat a stack of slightly uneven pancakes and a carton of orange juice half open. He looked up quickly when he heard her, his expression caught between embarrassment and determination. "You're cooking?" she asked, her voice filled with surprise. "Kind of," he said, shrugging. "I thought maybe I'd try. Don't expect them to taste good." Emma laughed softly, moving closer. "I'm already impressed." He turned back to the stove, flipping another pancake, though it came out lopsided. "I figured you're always the one taking care of things around here. Maybe you shouldn't have to all the time." The words landed heavy. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were real. For years she had been giving, offering, hoping. This was the first time he was giving something back. When he finished, he set a plate in front of her with an awkward smile. "Breakfast. Don't judge too hard." Emma sat, touched more than she could say. As she reached for her fork, she noticed something folded neatly by the plate, a small piece of paper. Curious, she picked it up and unfolded it. The handwriting was uneven, the ink smudged in places. But the words made her heart stop. "Thank you for not giving up on me. For being here even when I didn't make it easy. I know you're not my mom, but you've been family in ways I didn't admit before." Her hands trembled as she lowered the note. She blinked fast, fighting the tears that rushed to her eyes. Luke sat across from her, avoiding her gaze, pretending to sip juice as if he hadn't just handed her the most precious gift she could have imagined. "Luke," her voice was quiet, unsteady. "This means more than you know." He glanced up then, and for the first time his smile wasn't guarded. It wasn't polite or careful. It was real, open, almost vulnerable. "I didn't know how else to say it. I just wanted you to know." Emma reached across the table, her hand brushing against his. It wasn't a dramatic gesture, just a small touch, but in it carried every unspoken word she had been holding for years. He didn't pull away. Instead, he let her hand rest there, and in that silence, the distance between them dissolved. The pancakes didn't matter. The storm outside didn't matter. What mattered was that a wall had fallen, and in its place stood something new as they ate together. Luke began to talk more, his words flowing easier than before. He told her about classes, about friends she'd never heard him mention, about the little struggles of living away from home. Emma listened, smiling, encouraging, laughing when he teased himself. She realized this was what she had been waiting for, not perfection. Not forced closeness, but genuine connection. When David came downstairs later, rubbing his eyes and expecting another quiet morning, he paused at the sight before him. Emma and Luke sat side by side at the kitchen table, laughing over a story, the remains of pancakes scattered between them. For a moment, David just watched, confusion flickering across his face. "What did I miss?" he asked finally. Emma looked at Luke, her heart swelling. "Just breakfast," she said, though she knew it was much more. Luke gave a small grin, one that reached his eyes. Yeah, just breakfast. But for both of them, it wasn't just breakfast. It was the first sign of trust. The first proof that they weren't strangers anymore. That morning, Emma realized something powerful. Love doesn't always arrive with big gestures. Sometimes it comes in the quiet offerings, the simple acts that speak louder than words. A note written with shaky hands. Pancakes made with too much flour. A smile that finally lets the walls down. Those were the things that changed everything by the evening. The storm had softened, leaving the world outside coated in fresh snow that glimmered under the fading light. Inside, the house felt warmer than ever, not just from the fire or the candles, but from the new energy that had taken hold. Emma moved around the living room, tidying a few things, but she couldn't stop smiling. Something had shifted between her and Luke, something delicate yet strong. like the first green shoots of spring pushing through the frost. David returned home a little later than expected, his coat dusted with snow and his cheeks red from the cold. As he opened the front door, he paused, taking in the scene before him. Emma was sitting at the table, laughing at something Luke had said, while Luke leaned back in his chair, eyes bright, a genuine smile on his face. The sight caught David off guard. He had been used to the quiet tension between his wife and his son, the careful politeness, the distance. And now, for the first time in years, it was gone. "What's going on here?" David asked, a teasing note in his voice, though his eyes searched theirs for answers. Emma looked up and grinned. "Just a new beginning," she said softly, her voice steady. There was no drama, no grand speech, just honesty, quiet and simple, but powerful. Luke nodded, faint flush on his cheeks. "Yeah, we're good now," he said. His words were small, but the weight behind them was huge. It wasn't just a statement, it was a promise, a recognition that things were changing for the better. David laughed, relief washing over him as he shook his head. "I can't believe it." "Took you too long enough." Emma laughed with him, feeling lighter than she had in years. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a home that wasn't filled with quiet awkwardness, but with laughter, trust, and warmth. She looked at Luke and felt a wave of gratitude. The boy who had once seemed so distant had given her something she hadn't dared to hope for: a bridge, a connection, a family. The rest of the evening passed in simple, beautiful ways. They cooked dinner together, David chopping vegetables, Luke stirring the pot, and Emma tasting sauces, giving her honest critiques. There was no tension, no unspoken rules, just cooperation and the joy of being together. They told stories from the past, shared small jokes, and discovered common interests they hadn't known they had. It was effortless, natural, and real. After dinner, they moved to the living room, curling up under blankets by the fireplace. Outside, the wind had died down, leaving only the hush of snow on the ground. Inside, the warmth was more than physical. It was the comfort of understanding, of acceptance, and of love, expressed in small, meaningful gestures. Emma realized how easy it could have been for them to remain distant forever, each stuck in their own walls of pride or fear. But Luke had taken the first step, and she had responded with openness. That simple exchange, the note, the breakfast, the laughter had done more to heal old wounds than months of polite coexistence ever could. As the night deepened, Emma caught Luke glancing at her, his eyes soft, full of something unspoken. She smiled, knowing he was thinking the same thing she was. Life could be messy, complicated, and sometimes painful, but it also had moments of pure clarity, moments where hearts opened without warning. And that night, hearts had opened. David watched them quietly, sensing the change too. He had loved his son and his wife both fiercely, but he knew there had always been a layer of distance he hadn't been able to bridge. Seeing them here, comfortable and connected, made him proud, relieved, and deeply content. He didn't need to say much. The scene spoke volumes. Emma thought about how far they had come. She remembered the tension, the silence, the invisible walls that had kept them apart. She remembered the long nights of doubt, wondering if she would ever be able to earn Luke's trust. And now everything felt different. Trust had been built not through force, but through small, genuine gestures. Patience, care, and quiet acknowledgement had created a bond stronger than she had hoped for. Luke's hand brushed against hers accidentally as he reached for the blanket, and neither pulled away. The simple touch was filled with meaning. It said, without words, "I see you. I trust you. You matter." And for Emma, it was enough to fill her heart completely. As the night wore on, they all settled into the living room, a family in the truest sense, not perfect, not without past scars, but whole in ways that mattered. Laughter came easily. Conversations flowed, and the quiet moments were shared in a way that spoke louder than words. It was a new kind of harmony, born from understanding, patience, and love expressed in small, genuine ways. Before heading to bed, Emma glanced at Luke. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. He gave her a small, shy smile, and in that moment, She knew he understood that she didn't want to replace his mother. She only wanted to be someone he could rely on. Someone who cared without conditions. Luke nodded slightly, and David gave a small approving chuckle from across the room. The house was silent again, but this time it was the silence of contentment, not distance. It was a silence that held warmth, trust, and love. It was the kind of silence that made a home feel alive. Emma realized that love often came quietly, without grand gestures or dramatic words. It arrived through small Axe pancakes made with care, notes written with sincerity, laughter shared over simple games, and the willingness to be seen and accepted. That was the love that lasted, the love that healed, the love that built families.